Next, we'll move to Committee Chair over Law and Licensing. Chair Lear, are you ready?
I am. Give me 1 second. Hang on,
Okay.
1 second. Oops, oops, oh, yes. Okay, items 12 point, I think my computer, yeah. Item 12.2, Snow College Charter School authorization was discussed at length with Snow College personnel, and a week or 2 weeks ago, we had a lot of questions and we were asking for more information as committee members. And about 2 weeks ago, President Brad Cook withdrew the request for a review of the school's processes, saying they may come back. He may come back with another request in, he said, 6 to or plus months. So if you were looking closely at our agenda, that's why we're not discussing it. Item 12.3 was also, we asked the individuals involved to come back with more information and with clarification. It was about a data sharing agreement, so it's on tomorrow's agenda. Item 12.4, we have a motion for the board. The committee moves that the board approve R277-303 Educator Preparation Programs Draft 1 on second and final reading.
Okay, the motion before the board is that the board approve R277-303 Educator Preparation Programs Draft 1 on second and final reading. Any discussion to that motion? I'm not seeing any hands raised. Oh, yes. Board Member Moss.
Very quick question, because I wasn't in on this. Curious what the feedback is from districts on this change and how significant it is.
And I would really like somebody like Director Thronson or Director Malia Height over licensing to respond to that. We had some discussion of it, but it's left my brain over Christmas.
Okay. Jennifer, are you available?
Yes, let me get my video up. If possible, can we open the rule? Because I think it's really easy to explain when you see the change.
It doesn't show the change.
Yes, I can do that.
Thanks,
And again,
Angie.
the question was about LEA feedback, I guess is what you're asking, Representative.
Right, on the pedagogical assessment.
Right, correct.
So basically this was, it looks way messier than it is. It just took a lot to restate it. There was a particular group of candidates that weren't included in the pedagogical performance assessment. It was an oversight with all of the multiple rule changes. And so this just clarified that all new educators after January 1 of 2020 are required to pass the pedagogical assessment if they're recommended after August 1st of 2021. So that is the change. It had left out, I'm trying to remember what group of educators. It was a oversight in one rule, but it wasn't in the other one. And so it was just getting alignment. But that is the change. And the feedback from the field, we haven't received any that has this. It was more the field had told us this is a contradiction. In that one rule, it says this. It was our Apple teachers. Now it's coming back to me. Our alternate prepared path teachers weren't required to take this, but our traditionally required teachers were, with the way it was in rule. But the intent was that all new educators would be taking the pedagogical performance assessment. So that is what this fix is.
You have a follow-up, Board Member Moss?
Thank you. So this is in line with statute or initial statutory intent, and just to clean up, no objection from the field in terms of limiting their discretion.
Correct. They actually asked us, like, hey, can you fix this? Because it puts them in an awkward space. So we realized with, as you all know, we changed like 20, 30 licensing rules. And so in those changes, we made some mistakes. And this was one of them that the field actually came to us and said, hey, this is problematic. So this fix alleviates that problem.
Thank you.
I think the bigger change, if I can add, I think the bigger discussion was about the pedagogical test or requirement generally, and there was a lot of feedback from the field on that, which this is just the cleanup after that.
Okay.
At least that's my recollection.
Board Member Klein, your hand is raised.
I just had a question. It looked to me like it was kind of a repeat of line 63B. Can you explain the difference? And is it just adding the date that makes the difference?
Jennifer, would you answer that, please?
Yes, so I need to look at, will you zoom out just a little, Angie? So I can see a little bit more. Yes, that's perfect. Okay, compare. Scroll up just a little bit more. Sorry, it helps to see the whole thing. Demonstrate or prepared, complete. And basically, this line is establishing the timeline of when it goes into effect. So if we didn't have that statement, it would say basically any teacher before that date would be required to take this, which is not what the board, they wanted to give some transition time. And so that statement is really holding that date true to all educators with that change. So that is the need for that line. In another year, you're right, it wouldn't need to be there, but because this is new requirement, that transition time is listed in the rule for now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands raised. Can we go back to the motion?
The motion for the board is the committee approves, the committee moves that the board approve R277-303 Educator Preparation Programs Draft 1 on second and final reading.
Thank you. So the motion before the board, Natalie, did you have another question? Your hand's still raised before you state the motion? Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, the motion before the board, and we're going to vote on it, is that the board approve R277-303 Educator Preparation Programs Draft 1 on second and final reading. Board members at this time, please vote.
I vote aye, Chair.
Thank you. The voting is complete and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Please clear the check.
Next items, item 12.5, 12.6, and 12.7 are all related. They relate to the desire of both the USDB and the board to have a change in the place where the USDB Advisory Council resides, where the discussion of that resides, rather than in board rule, it would be in board policy. And so these are all related to moving that from board, the advisory committee explanation from board rule to board policy. And so 12.5 is the first point of that, and it says, first part of that, and it says, the committee moves that the board approve board policy 4002, Utah Schools for the Deaf and Blind Advisory Council Draft 1.
Okay, the motion before the board from the committee is that the board approve board policy 4002, Utah Schools for the Deaf and Blind Advisory Council Draft 1. Any discussion to the motion? I'm not seeing any hands, so please vote. Board Member Lear, you're...
And I'm an aye.
Thank you. The voting is complete and the motion passes unanimously. Please continue.
Item 12.6 was a further discussion of this. The committee moves that the board approve R277-800 Utah Schools for the Deaf and Blind Draft 1 on second and final reading. This would be removing it from the rule, the advisory council language.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So the motion before the board is that the board approve R277-800 Utah Schools for the Deaf and the Blind Draft 1 on second and final reading. Discussion to the motion? I'm seeing none. Board members at this time, please vote.
Member Lear votes aye.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Lear. The voting is complete and the motion passes unanimously. Please continue.
And this has to do with the bylaws for the schools for the USDB, which is under the purview of the board. Item 12.7, the motion for the board is the committee moves that the board approve the bylaws for the Utah Schools for the Deaf and the Blind Advisory Council Draft 2.
Okay, the motion before the board is that the board approve the bylaws for the Utah Schools for the Deaf and Blind Advisory Council Draft 2. Discussion to that motion. We still have some hands raised, but I think Board Member Cannon, do you have a question or is that, okay. I'm not seeing any hands raised. So I'll restate the motion, then we'll vote. The motion before the board is that the board approve the bylaws for the Utah Schools for the Deaf and the Blind Advisory Council Draft 2. Board members at this time, please vote.
I vote aye, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Not seeing board, oh, there it is. The voting is complete and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Please continue.
The last item on the agenda is item 12.8, having to do with some cleanup on a law that was passed, I think a year, 2 years ago, having to do with residential treatment centers and the board's requirement to supervise those in certain capacities. And this was a cleanup following a year's experience with this and at the request and or with the support of the residential treatment center, some residential treatment center directors. So the motion for the board is that the committee moves that the board approve R277-926, certification of residential treatment center special education program, draft 1 on second and final reading.
Okay, the motion before the board from the committee is that the board approve R277-926, certification of residential treatment center special education program, draft 1 on second and final reading. Any discussion to the motion? And I am not seeing any hands. So board members at this time, please vote. Oh, let's see. Yeah. Yeah, please vote. Board Member Lear, you're
I vote aye.
okay. The voting is complete and the motion passes unanimously.
And that concludes our report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Lear.